In this video, we're looking at why the Tesla Model 3 is actually worse for the environment than the internal combustion engine. The Tesla Model 3 is less environmentally friendly than its combustion engine counterparts. So if you're driving around in the latest 2021 Model 3, you've already done way more damage to the environment than those driving around in large SUVs. Yep, you heard me right, and I'm a pro-EV, pro-Tesla person. By the time the Tesla Model 3's left the showroom, it's produced 4 times the amount of CO2 than its combustion engine equivalent. And that pains me to say, because I bought a Tesla Model 3 to be more environmentally friendly. So where's it all gone wrong, and why have we been fed this lie that EVs are actually better for the environment? So this investigation all stemmed from comments on my videos that said combustion cars are way better for the environment when you consider the CO2 produced to manufacture and drive the Tesla Model 3. Now I was about to shoot all these comments down saying don't be so ridiculous, but I like to work off evidence, so I looked into it, and to my surprise, they were right. No matter which scientific journal I looked in, all the evidence said the same conclusion. To make a battery for an EV produces shed loads of CO2. In fact, depending on the chemical makeup, the average production of CO2 that I could find was 177 kilograms of CO2 per kilowatt hour of electricity. So if you take my Tesla Model 3 that's got a 50 kilowatt hour battery, once you consider the manufacturing, the transport of materials, the electricity to produce, basically everything, we're looking at 8,850 kilograms of CO2, or 9 tons pretty much, before it's even left the showroom. For comparison, 1 ton of CO2 looks like this. Now the manufacture of a combustion car isn't completely CO2 free. In fact, it's about 4,200 kilograms to produce the chassis, then 1,270 kilograms to produce the engine and the transmission. So we're looking around 5,500. Unfortunately, we still need a chassis for the Tesla Model 3, so that's another 4,000 kilograms. And the motors, inverters, they produce another 1,600 kilograms. So all in all, the production of the Tesla Model 3 is over 14,500 kilograms of CO2. That's the equivalent of 8 Tesla Model 3s stacked on top of each other. The Tesla Model 3 is way worse for the environment than a combustion car in the manufacturing process. Now obviously the story doesn't end there, because the more you drive a combustion car, the more CO2 you're going to produce. Whereas depending on your energy source for your Tesla Model 3, that might not be the case. So how much CO2 do you reckon you produce from burning 1 litre of fuel? In my head, I was like, petrol weighs 740 grams, so it's got to be less than that, right? Wrong. And that's because when the combustion process occurs, the hydrocarbons split off. The hydrogen combines with oxygen to make H2O and comes out the exhaust as water, and then the carbon also combines with the oxygen to make CO2. But because the oxygen weighs a little bit more, you actually get more weight overall than the original liquid. In fact, you produce 2.3 kilograms of CO2 for every litre of petrol that you burn. And if you think about it, the manufacturers support this. Because if we take the Toyota Corolla, that's rated at giving out 180 grams of CO2 per mile driven. So how far will the Toyota Corolla go on a litre of fuel? Well, if it's rated to do 55 mpg, there's 4.55 litres in a gallon, which gives us about 12 miles per litre. So you take the 12 miles, times it by 180 grams, and that gives us 2.16 kilograms of CO2 per litre of fuel burn. But the petrol doesn't get to the pump on its own, so you're looking after transport and extraction another 0.7 kilograms per litre, bringing us to the grand total of 3 kilograms of CO2 per litre of petrol that's used. What, as if I'd have any petrol laying around? I own a Tesla. And this is where the Tesla Model 3 can catch up. The common war cry of Tesla haters is that you just shift the CO2 production to wherever the electricity comes from. And again, they're not wrong. In fact, if you drive a Tesla Model 3 that's powered by electricity generated from coal, it's actually worse for the environment the more you drive it. Because to produce 1 kilowatt hour of electricity from coal generates 1,029 grams of CO2. For natural gas, it's 595 grams, and for wind, it's only 21 grams. Solar is sometimes better, sometimes worse than wind, depending on the climate. Wind and solar don't actively produce CO2. What you have to just take into consideration is the amount of CO2 produced in the manufacturing process. You then divide that over the amount of electricity they're expected to generate in their lifetime, and that gives you an average CO2 per kilowatt hour as such. They don't actively produce any more CO2 once they've been built. So we now need to convert that into something where we can compare it to the Toyota Corolla. So we need to figure out what a gallon of electricity is. Well, if you burn a gallon of petroleum, it generates a certain amount of energy. To get the same amount of energy from electricity, you need 33.7 kilowatt hours of electricity. So we say that effectively a gallon of petroleum is equal to 33.7 kilowatt hours of electricity to be able to compare the two. Which means CO2 emissions to get a gallon of electricity from coal would be 34.68 kilograms. To get it from natural gas, it's only 20 kilograms, and actually wind is only 0.7 kilograms. The CO2 produced from a gallon of petroleum, well, we know it's 3 kilograms per litre, and there's 4.55 litres to a gallon. So it's simply 4.55 times 3, which gives us 13.65 kilograms of CO2. Now, don't be fooled here that natural gas is worse than petroleum, because it's not, because don't forget, a Tesla Model 3 is going to go a lot further on a gallon of electricity than a combustion car will on a gallon of petroleum. The MPG of the Tesla Model 3 is 136, so to work out the grams of CO2 per mile, we take the amount of CO2 to make a gallon of electricity divided by the number of miles it's going to do. So for coal, it'd be 34.68 kilograms divided by 136, which gives us 255 grams per mile of CO2. For natural gas, it's 147 grams per mile, and for wind, it's just 5.1 grams. To work out how much CO2 is produced by a combustion car, you take the amount of CO2 produced from burning a gallon of fuel, which we know is 13.65, divided by the number of miles it will do on that gallon. So for a 50 mpg car, we've got 13.65 divided by 50, which gives us 274 grams per mile of CO2. For a 36 mpg car, it's 381 grams per mile of CO2. So we can see that every other source of electricity production, bar coal, the Tesla Model 3 is greener for the environment when you consider the entire life cycle. And that's even if you include burning gas to make the electricity. How much greener is going to depend on your electricity mix for your specific country. So for example, the UK, only 1% of its electricity was produced by coal at the end of 2020. 40% was natural gas and 26% was wind and solar. And with the percentage of wind and solar set to increase in the UK, that's just going to get greener and greener. Coal made up 11% in the US. With the European electricity mix, the break-even point for CO2 emissions is between 27 and 48,000 miles. And in fact, the bigger the EV, the quicker the break-even point because of the inefficiency of driving bigger vehicles. So for example, the Tesla Model S, if you compared it to say the BMW 8 Series or Audi A7 or something similar in its class, that would actually break even at 27,000 miles. Whereas if you compared it to say a Renault Zoe versus the Renault Clio, then that break-even point would be 48,000 miles because the Renault Clio is a more efficient car. But this study actually was done in 2015 when the electricity mixes were different. I'd say they're a lot greener now, which means those payback figures should be significantly less. Also, don't forget you can get a completely green electricity tariff now, which will get you payback a lot quicker. Things like OCTOPUS. If you're interested in that, you can look at my referral code in the description, which will earn you 50 quid if you switch. Also, you'll get 5p per kilowatt hour rates overnight, which is far cheaper to charge your EV than any other electricity tariff I can find. Generally as well, these studies were all done on outdated and quite inefficient EVs. Like one looked at the VW e-Golf. None of them looked specifically at Teslas, and I think with Tesla streamlining their manufacturing process, their battery tech's improving, I can imagine all those CO2 production figures are going to be a lot less now. So the science was indisputable. No matter which study I looked at, they all came to the same conclusion, that Tesla Model 3 is better for the environment if you include the entire life cycle. And that includes the disposal and the recycling of all the batteries before anyone starts with that. Now, I'm not a green warrior. I bought a Tesla Model 3 partly for the environment, partly because they're cheaper to run, partly because of the tech, and also I just think they're more fun to drive. So if you don't want an EV, that's absolutely fine. I think you're missing out personally, but don't go around spreading or believing information that they're worse for the environment, because quite frankly, they're just not. And the greener and greener the electricity mix becomes, well, the quicker that initial production payback is going to be in CO2. So feel free to share this video with anyone that disagrees or thinks that EVs are bad for the environment. That's all for this week. Thanks for watching. Don't forget to like, comment and subscribe. I will see you again soon.